Member for Brisbane.
My question is to the Minister for Education and Training. Will the minister inform the House of the benefits to the international education sector of the government's recently concluded free trade agreement with China, and what are the risks to the realisation of these benefits?
I call the Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Brisbane for her question. And I'm very pleased to tell her and the House that, of course, international education has been one of the stand-out successes of this government in the last 2 years, on this, the anniversary day of the election of the Abbott government. In the last 2 years, Mr Speaker, international education has gone from about $16 billion of value to the Australian economy to over $18 billion of value to the Australian economy in the last 2 financial years, and year on year, enrolments of international students has increased 14.6%. So international education is one of those areas that is providing jobs and growth. In fact, it is the 4th largest export industry after iron ore, coal and natural gas, in front of gold. The CHAFTA, the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, will allow that to expand even further, because under the CHAFTA, negotiated by the Minister for Trade, China will open up the market even more to non-university higher education providers. Overnight, 77 private providers will be added to the Ministry of Education website as preferred providers within a year of the agreement being settled by Australia and China. So you would think that all Australians and all people in this House would be in favour of expanding the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement in order to open up more markets for international education providers, more jobs and more growth. But Labor represents a risk to these jobs and this growth, Mr Speaker. Labor is the cat's paw of the CFMEU, and for short-term political gain, they are hopping into bed with the CFMEU to oppose the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, and with that opposition are denying jobs and growth to the higher education market in Australia. And they should be ashamed of themselves, Mr Speaker. They should be ashamed of themselves, because it's only due to the weakness of the Leader of the Opposition that this is being allowed to occur. Great Labor leaders stand up to unions like the CFMEU, but not this Labor leader, Mr Speaker. This Labor leader has decided instead to hand over policy on trade and investment and jobs and growth to the CFMEU, one of the most discredited unions in Australia's history, ranking alongside the BLF, from which many of its members came. Labor should listen to real Labor luminaries: Bob Hawke, Bob Carr, Simon Crean, even Jay Weatherill, Daniel Andrews from Victoria, Luke Foley from New South Wales, people who are real Labor leaders who know what's good for jobs and growth.